Hello and welcome to Green Building Bites presented by Green Building Alliance. I'm Leslie Montgomery from the Green Building Alliance team, and in today's bite, we'll be exploring why and how nonprofit organizations are leaders in the green building industry. I have long observed that nonprofits and mission-driven organizations have been early adopters in green building standards like LEED and Living Building Challenge, and I've been wondering why that is. I had a couple of my own ideas of what could be behind this phenomenon, but I really wanted to explore it. So I'll be talking with three nonprofit leaders today about their organizations, their buildings, why and how they pursued green building projects, and what insights they could share with me about the challenges and enabling factors of being a nonprofit pursuing green building. Let's talk to them now. Okay. All right. So I have with me today Conor McGarvey from the National Aviary, Angela Garcia from Global Links, and Danielle Crumrine from Tree Pittsburgh. So we're going to kick it off.
Again, my name is Conor McGarvey. I am Director of Facility Development and Operations with the National Aviary on Pittsburgh's north side. A really interesting project that we had recently completed in late 2020 was a LEED Gold certified new event space. We call it the Garden Room. There's a lot of really neat features to the space. One of the really kind of neat features that our architect, PWWG, Pittsburgh architectural firm, pulled in is the way it kind of ties into Lake Elizabeth on Allegheny Commons with this big, beautiful wall of glass. It's got an etching in the glass that protects migratory birds from basically seeing the reflection, and bird strikes are frankly a big problem with conservation in the avian kind of realm of conservation. So that whole wall of glass is bird safe. It's kind of a state-of-the-art bird safe glass, as is really the rest of the glass at the National Aviary. We're kind of a pretty neat showcase for many different designs of bird safe and bird friendly glass. If you kind of look at the mission of the National Aviary, our mission is to inspire respect for nature through an appreciation of birds. So we are very much a conservation organization, and tied in through that is obviously sustainable work, daily operations and capital projects. The Garden Room to the National Aviary, right now we're already doing about 170 paid events a year. And we'll be approaching 200 probably paid events here in 2023. Revenues from those events actually tie back directly to our conservation operations, so our daily operations. To really, our objective is to educate people on native habitats and unique species. We're very much the leader in avian conservation and species survival programs. So again, the Garden Room, this LEED Gold certified facility, really helps support our mission and vision at the National Aviary.
That's great. It's a beautiful space. All right, Danielle, tell me about yourself and Tree Pittsburgh and the building project you're going to share about.
Thank you. So I'm Danielle Crumrine, Executive Director at Tree Pittsburgh, and Tree Pittsburgh works to engage the public in tree planting and preservation across Allegheny County. And we really came to this project out of a need. We were growing as an organization. We needed more space. Our tree nursery was growing and proving to be a very successful pilot. So we looked for a piece of land where we could co-locate all of our programs. So at the end of the day, we ended up in Lawrenceville on the Allegheny River. What do we need to grow trees? We need water and sun. So it really was just absolutely the perfect opportunity to locate on the river. For the building, we have a 6,000 square foot building where we have our offices, we have a workshop and garage where we keep all of our tools and our vehicles, locker room for our field staff. And then similar to Conor, looking at this as an earned revenue opportunity, we built an education center / event space. So not only do we have a place to host our own programs, but we can rent out the space to generate operating income to help keep the building funded, self-funded, which has proven to be successful. Another unique part of this project is that this was a steel mill for decades. It was tip and steel. The property was owned by the city, and we're in the process of purchasing it. to put it into conservation easement. Remediation was also a part of this project. So we learned a ton, working with the Department of Environmental Protection to clean it up, make sure it's safe before we develop. So, this really is what's going to help Tree Pittsburgh launch into that next chapter of its life. And here we are now positioned for growth again, in large part due to having this space that we can leverage.
Thank you, Danielle. All right, Angela, talk to me about Global Links and your building.
I'm Angela Garcia. I'm the executive director of Global Links, and our building is a little bit different. Global Links was looking also to expand but consolidate. We occupied 3 different older industrial spaces in the city, and we're really challenged because our mission is to improve health for vulnerable communities. So really looking at both the working environment for our team and a limited budget. We did end up moving in 10 years ago to the 58,000 square foot facility that we now occupy. The benefits there was it was an FDA clean facility. So we definitely looked at lots of those industrial sites along the rivers as well, and the remediation challenges. But being a health organization, we rescue healthcare surplus, medical surplus products. So really needing a very clean space. So this building was a manufacturing facility for vitamins and supplements, a Pittsburgh-based company that is still located here. So being an FDA clean space inside, but very energy intensive. So they had a lot of functionality here in the building that we would not need. We needed the square footage, we needed the natural light. So it's been a 10-year journey to get to energy independence. And so our retrofitting of this space over the past 10 years has been from completely gutting the energy side, updating the HVAC, which was extremely old, but also more than we would ever need. And then the past 3 years has been really updating our energy sourcing. So between solar energy, updating all the lighting in the building from also 30, 40-year-old lighting. So it's taken a different type of journey, but also, based around our core values, which are respect for the environment and dignity and respect for all people. So really making it as much of a healthy working space for our team, but also for the thousands of volunteers who are part of our organization.
Sometimes there can be, barriers involved with either choosing a green building certification or, pursuing a green building. So do you have any insights to share about what the, either motivating factors or deciding factors were in really pursuing sustainability in your buildings and making it a reality?
Definitely finance was a big motivator from the way we designed the space to have event rental income, and the way that the building is designed for energy use. We designed it to be net positive. We've also tried to operate the building in a way that we match it up to that revenue that we're generating from the event space. So really keeping costs under control. I think time will tell how this is going to work out because this is a brand new building. So over the years, we know that we're going to have to put together a fund to, maintain it in the long run. So there's a number of ways that we've tried to make sure that this building and campus helps to sustain the organization. So that was definitely a motivating factor.
For nonprofit, a lot of times, at least for us here, it's our objective to really fully fund a project before we start work on it. So the advantage of that from a building operator side, which I obviously kind of keep an eye on, is any kind of advanced technologies or energy efficiencies or operational efficiencies that we can have are going to help us manage our operating costs, kind of in perpetuity. So ultimately, maybe spending a little bit more money up front is going to save considerable money in the long term. We've got this big, beautiful park that the National Aviary is situated right in the middle of. So the connectivity of that park was really important. So again, the architects and the planning process of kind of making that, taking advantage of that kind of biophilic advantage of the opportunity that we have to connect ultimately our event attendees and patrons to the outside, to that Lake Elizabeth side of the facility. So it's really different from what my background was previously, but it's made me gain a new appreciation for conservation and sustainability, not just through our daily operations, but also through our capital projects as well.
I think it's the longer term plan that we're on. From a financial standpoint, we had to look at how do we lower the occupancy costs as much as possible. And we couldn't do everything at once. As much as there could have been efficiencies, and we looked at some things, that was really the driving factor, is how do we get the cost to run the building as low as possible and improve the working environment. And the second part is we don't have actually we don't have the green space around our building. We are out in Green Tree along the Parkway corridor. So we don't have grounds as much as parking lots. So we have secured funding this year to improve our parking lots, both for accessibility as well as the water management. So it's sort of taken us, like, we knew we had this laundry list of so many things to improve in this building. But our third core value, in our mission, I mentioned dignity, respect for all people, and respect for the environment, but it's continuous learning and improvement. And I constantly remind myself and our board and our supporters, like, those three things are what guide us, right? So we are learning, we are continually improving our space, how we work, each of these, all the different sort of aspects of it, and how we approach those, obviously combined with the budgetary impact and the financing or the fundraising, but it's continually evolving, right? We are not done. It's definitely a journey.
I think that's so smart. And if somebody's watching this and they're thinking about building a building, I think that is such an important lesson, is that don't do everything at once. You have to live in the space and understand how it's going to function for you. And then you could add things. There's so many things without putting yourself into debt right off the bat, making sure that it's affordable for you. And then you could add things down the road.
My next question is about funding mechanisms, special, possible opportunities that you found that helped make your building possible. So Conor, did the aviary take advantage of any, grants or funding?
Very fortunate here to work for an organization, a nonprofit that has a dedicated philanthropy arm. We've got a department that is dedicated to grant writing and seeking funding for not only capital projects, but our daily operation. So those folks were obviously kind of driving the ship here is related to the garden room project and frankly every other project that we have. Again, specifically, we just kind of seek out foundations and funders that are going to kind of, depending on the project here at the aviary, kind of meet their mission and visions, whether it's energy reduction or conservation, or if there's some kind of a general fund or something like that.
A couple funds I think worth mentioning. One, especially if you have to remediate your site before you build on it, the state of Pennsylvania has a fund called Industrial Sites Reuse Program, ISRP, and we were able to access funds specifically for brownfield development, which was fantastic. And the second, related to our solar, Green Mountain Energy Sun Club was the major funder of our solar power, 6-figure investor in that. And then another fund called Penelec here in Pennsylvania, we were able to access as well. Even though we're not in their service area, we have some goals around educating the public around the use of renewable energy. So we were able to make the argument that we would do a lot of outreach around our building. So we were able to access that money as well. And then similar to Conor, just good old fashioned grant writing, asking people for money to make it all happen. At the end of the day, that's what it took.
For our solar project, we really didn't even think it was in our capacity to install solar. But having worked with the Pittsburgh community, people reached out, and it was the PA Solar Center reached out to us because they were familiar with our project and the staff there working at other places. And when the PA Solar Center, a nonprofit created to help nonprofits access solar, they remembered our roof. So they really helped us to navigate and really think about it as an option. So really resetting our brains. And we also then were able to get a support from Green Mountain Energy Sun Club Foundation, combined with a financing tool with our roofing and energy installers. So we were able to combine the roofing and the solar installation into one project, which allowed our vendor, Scalo Solar, work with us on a financing tool that reduced the cost by bundling those projects together. So we actually have a 5-year power purchasing agreement. We're in year 3. And with the economy being what it is, I didn't realize what a benefit that would be, because we still pay during those 5 years for our electricity, but we are paying at a locked in rate with the Inflation Reduction Act. There's different opportunities, but also challenges in understanding what's the best way to approach it.
I think, what I'm reminded of listening to all of you is just remembering how great nonprofits are at creative problem solving and collaborating towards the goals. Do any of you have, challenges that you or your project teams faced during the course of the project? And also, Danielle already offered some really great advice, but advice that you might offer to other organizations that are either looking to update their building or move or build?
Most of the challenges for our project were related to the site conditions. We are in Pittsburgh with lots of vacant land that was formerly industrial, and navigating the process of remediating the property and then, digging a foundation and getting utilities. We were really starting from scratch. But I think the project was so inspiring. It really represents where Pittsburgh is going, putting a tree nursery and an environmental center on the river. So we kept with it. One big piece of advice, and maybe this was possible because the size of our project, but I ended up serving as the project manager, which isn't always typical for an executive director. What that did for me is I was at the construction meetings every week. So if a problem came up, I was part of the solution team. So it really helped to keep the project moving quickly. And then also just bringing in my perspective and, I could have a different context to bring to the table. So that's a bit of advice that I often give other executive directors, is to try to get a little bit in the weeds on the project.
I think the biggest challenges have been prioritizing not just what to do next, but also balancing where do we have staff support and interest, right? Because it can be extremely exhausting to be working in the midst of construction, remodeling, rebuilding, maintenance. So really framing the story, how this is going to help us, how this allows us to, do what the next phase is, and finding the champions, I think, has sometimes been challenging. Right. It was super exciting before we got into the weeds. And sometimes that constant change, because it's changing the space people are coming to work in. I think that has been really what I've seen. Slow and steady sometimes is better in the long run, what we've seen.
Specific to the garden room, some of our challenges, it was fortunately the project was well enough along that COVID really didn't impact it too much. We had a little bit of interruption on that end. But what we're seeing now with the several capital projects that we've done between now and the start of the pandemic, and what we have on the docket over the next year, 2, 3 years, is just cost increases.
So this is kind of an interesting one, but a lot of conversations that we have with owners, at GBA are focused on return on investment. I have a feeling that mission-driven organizations see that a little bit differently. And I'd like to know if you agree with that. And I guess by that, I mean, the return on investment, is a strictly financial equation. But I wonder if there are other indicators to you that an investment was worthwhile.
I don't think we use ROI in the same way at all. We have KPIs and we have data and we track a lot, but what drives us is, our mission, right? So how many human lives are we impacting? In our case, how much surplus are we rescuing, keeping out of unnecessary disposal, but also staff retention, which I think is universal across the sectors, and staff satisfaction, right? So rather than the ROI, it's cost avoidance to us. So if we do this, what are we going to reduce in the short term and or long term? That may not be a one-to-one, it's often not, but what can we fundraise for? And what part of that story, what part of our story, what part of our organizational culture and mission and values is that related to? Because that's oftentimes what we're presenting to the potential, whether it be a foundation or a donor. Why does this matter to us as the humans who work in this space and the humans who will work in this space in the future? What's the story and how are we living our core values, right? So in terms of sustainability, nonprofits really approach anything very intentionally in general. It's not just dollars and cents, but also how it plays into part of the nonprofit's story and the nonprofit's impact, not just directly on those served, but those who are part of serving the mission.
Certainly, looking at our balance sheet and our P&L regularly, and frankly, measuring and evaluating and analyzing true ROI on mechanical systems or energy systems and things like that is obviously important, with our objective of again, kind of inspiring that respect for nature. If you drill down on that, it really lends itself to educating the next generation of conservationists and sustainability minded individuals. And I think that the National Aviary does a tremendous job of promoting that. So you can almost see the inspiration in people's eyes. You can see the appreciation for the work that we're doing here. And that, in and of itself, and again, that's very much on a personal level, that I'm kind of happy to share, that was very gratifying for me personally, but I think it also just furthers that mission of the National Aviary, that folks are able to enjoy what we have here, inspire them. I know, having worked here for 3 years, it's really inspired me on a personal level as well. So it's really exciting and important stuff.
I want to agree with Angela about the staff and having a healthy place for the staff to work. It's very inspiring here as well. And I think, what someone must think when they come here for a job interview, like, wow, I really want to work in this building. This is such a cool place. I get to look at the river all day long. So there's that piece. Second, and I'm sure Conor can relate to this, someone might be here to attend a wedding in our event space. They may never have heard of Tree Pittsburgh. They may not like to drive to the city at all. And here they are on this old steel mill site and suddenly learning about Tree Pittsburgh. So we have to make sure we do our job to, take advantage of those opportunities for folks who are just visiting here, so they leave with some new knowledge. And third, I think, again, Angela mentioned this, all of the thousands of volunteers that come through this space, and the kids that come here for summer camp, kids that may never have touched the river in their life, now have the opportunity to walk down the walking trail and go paddleboarding on the Allegheny River. And that was a real driver from the beginning, is making sure Pittsburghers had access. This access point to the river is really special. And there's just so many serendipitous learning opportunities everywhere you walk on this campus. So I think, that's really, when we talk about return on investment, how do you measure all of those things? But definitely important to us.
Do any of you have thoughts on, whether or not there might be specific factors that make nonprofit organizations or mission focused organizations particularly, good at being leaders in green buildings?
Maybe we're helping to make green building more mainstream, and we're helping to work out kinks and demonstrate affordability. $250 a square foot, we built our building, and that's awfully affordable. So I think we're maybe the pilot cases to then help just make this more commonplace. Maybe it's a little more forgiving for us to fail at something than a for-profit company. So we are able to take those risks.
From my perspective, nonprofits, and I've worked, this is the second nonprofit that I've worked for, but I think we have to be good stewards. I think we have an inherent desire or need to be good stewards of our funders, support, whether that's, membership or grants or so forth. Like I think we try to be a little bit extra aware of how we manage those funds and allocate those funds. I think furthermore, the thing that I've noticed as well is nonprofits. I think we care about our people. I think it's one of the really important things that has come up a few times here today is being good to the people that are good to us, whether they're employees, they're attendees, they're stakeholders, they're board members. Those relationships and how important they are to work on and again be good stewards of, I think is as important, if not more important, in the nonprofit sector than it is, I think, in other sectors.
I think it's a combination of things both Danielle and Conor mentioned, and one other factor, what you mentioned last, the ROI. In general, people that go into nonprofit, particularly in positions of leadership, our motivators to work in the nonprofit sector are different. We have a lot more both ability to be forgiven as much as sort of following a vision. I see so much of that in the nonprofit leadership sector. People that are driven by compassion for the human condition, the environment, our planet, very, very passionate about it. So when you're looking at that and going, we don't have to show ROI in dollars and cents. There are other impacts and there are other things like that. We are concerned about our people that we are, whether they are our clients in our building, whether they are volunteers, whether they are our staff, right? Our whole sector exists to make the world and the condition better for others. So I think just in terms of coming from that, if there is a way to make our workspaces or, our work days or our work scheduling or our benefits, like we are looking at that because people are so valuable, right? And that is where we're putting people first and community driven impact first rather than the profit first, right? And it doesn't mean there aren't great leaders in the corporate world. There are, but they have other responsibilities that they don't have the same freedom that I think nonprofit leadership does.
Again, as a kind of a building operator, it was always 7 years. Like you needed about a 7-year ROI. If you could get below that, it was great. But if you weren't 7, maybe 7.5 years, it was kind of a non-starter. Like you really, unfortunately, it's not a good fit for us right now. But I think at least on the nonprofit side, I still try to evaluate that ROI, and it doesn't have to be 7 or below, maybe, because of the more qualitative ROI that we're all kind of talking about here that is so important. It just kind of had the epiphany as we're all talking through what does ROI mean to a nonprofit.
It just makes me think our missions in the nonprofit sector are working to improve conditions. We see it as do no harm, right? That is so prevalent in the healthcare industry, do no harm. Well, it's do no harm to the planet. So if in terms of operating our work and our spaces and our buildings, we can do no harm, I think that's just inherent in the DNA of the nonprofit sector, right? So always looking at ways that we're not going to damage our community, wherever we're embedded, that we're not going to damage the people that engage with the space, and we're not going to damage the natural environment.
You each have provided such good insight. Thank you all so much. I can't wait to share this with the world via our YouTube channel. I truly appreciate all of you, and I continue to love to share all of your stories too. So you'll continue to hear from me because I think you're all great.